In this lesson, we're going to look at electron arrangements and learn to determine the energy levels of electrons for elements. If you took another chemistry class, you may have done electron configurations. You can think of this as a simplified version of electron configurations. So for electron energy levels, we're going to look at 4 levels because we're not going to look at the entire periodic table. We're only going to go up to the first 20 elements. And what we know is that the energy level n equals 1, or those electrons are closest to the nucleus in the atom, and it's also the lowest energy level. As we go to n equals 2, it's farther away from the nucleus, higher energy level. Same for n equals 3 and n equals 4. Notice that the difference in energy level between 1 and 2 is much greater than the energy level between 2 and 3, and then 3 and 4. So the energy levels start to get closer together. When we start putting electrons in this diagram to represent the location of electrons in an atom, we're going to think about this like a bookshelf. So if we were filling our bookshelf, we would put books on the first shelf on the bottom first because that's the easiest to reach. And once it was full, then we would go to the second shelf and the third shelf and so on. So for our energy levels, when we look at the number of electrons we have and how they are arranged, the electrons are going to by default go into the lowest energy level first. So before we start filling up those energy levels with electrons, we need to talk about how many electrons can actually go in each energy level. And for the n equals 1 level, we can only have 2 electrons. That's the maximum number of electrons that can fit in that energy level. We're not going to get into the chemistry behind why. That's a little bit longer topic than we need to worry about in this class, but there is a scientific reason behind that. For the next energy level, n equals 2, we can have 8 electrons. When we go on to n equals 3, we'll see that our maximum is only going to be 8 electrons. In reality, n equals 3 and higher levels can all have more than 8 electrons. But because we're only going to element 20, which is calcium, we will only be putting 8 electrons. So they can hold more, but we are not going to do that. Once you get to the transition metals, then things start to get a little more challenging about the way electrons are arranged, and so we're going to stop at calcium because that's the majority of the elements that we're going to be worried about in this course. So n equals 4, where our max is only going to be 2 electrons because again, we're stopping at calcium and it will only have 2 electrons in the n equals 4 level. What is the electron arrangement for phosphorus? The first thing we need to determine is how many electrons are in phosphorus. We see that phosphorus has an atomic number of 15. It is a neutral atom because we're not given any information about having a charge. So the number of protons will equal the number of electrons, and it will have 15 electrons. Now we're going to look at where those electrons go. So we're going to have the first 2 electrons will be in the n equals 1 level. That leaves us 13 electrons left over. Next, we will put 8 electrons into the n equals 2 level. The remaining electrons will go into the n equals 3 level. The reason we're concerned about the electron arrangements and where these electrons are located in an atom is because it helps us understand more about the bonding that these atoms will then undergo to form compounds. Let's look at another example. What is the electron arrangement for chlorine? The first question we need to ask is how many electrons are in a single chlorine atom? We look at the atomic number, which is 17. We're dealing with a neutral species because there's no indication of charge, so we must have 17 electrons. We start by putting electrons in the lowest energy level first. And we're going to put 2 electrons in the n equals 1 level. We will have 8 electrons in the n equals 2 level. And the remaining 7 will go in the n equals 3 level.